Earlier this year, reports emerged in the United States suggesting that if circumstances demanded, Washington might suspend the supply of engines for China's C919 aircraft. For those unfamiliar, the C919 is not just any airplane. It is a medium-haul passenger jet that symbolizes nearly 2 decades of China's determination to break into a market long dominated by Boeing and Airbus. It took 17 painstaking years of research, design, and testing before the jet was finally ready. Since it entered commercial service in May of 2023, the aircraft has carried more than 1 million passengers and has already logged over 28,000 hours of safe flight. For China, this is more than a machine. It is a statement of technological independence. Many observers believe it is only a matter of time before the C919, like its American and European counterparts, begins crossing oceans and landing in airports around the world. Yet beneath this success lies a hard truth. The engine is the heart of an aircraft. Without it, the dream cannot fly. And if the United States truly cut off the supply of engines, China's ambitious large aircraft program could face the very real possibility of suspension within just 3 years. At precisely this sensitive moment, Russia stepped in with an offer that caught global attention. Sergei, the general director of the Russian State Technology Corporation, openly declared in an interview with Sputnik News that Moscow is ready to support China. If Beijing has the need, Russia is willing to supply multiple models of engines, including the PD-14, one of its latest designs. The statement sounded reassuring on the surface, but it immediately raised 2 critical questions. First, why exactly does the United States want to interrupt the supply of engines for the C919? And second, can Russia's promises be trusted? Or are they destined to remain just words of goodwill without real delivery behind them? To understand this better, we must travel to the outskirts of Paris, where a place known as Villaroche stands at the heart of the global aviation industry. Here, in the Villaroche industrial zone, sits one of the most important aircraft engine plants in the world. This facility is the beating heart of Safran Aircraft Engines, and also the central production hub for CFM International, the joint venture that manufactures engines for countless modern planes. The site sprawls across more than 100 hectares, the size of more than 140 football fields, and employs over 5,000 people. Research engineers, assembly technicians, logistics experts, and after-sales service teams. Together, they form a highly integrated industrial chain that turns out some of the most advanced engines on the planet. Thanks to this combination of cutting-edge equipment and deep expertise, the Villaroche plant is capable of building over 1,600 aircraft engines every year, providing power to more than 800 airplanes worldwide. If you look at today's skies, the impact of this factory is staggering. More than 70% of all single-aisle passenger aircraft flying around the world rely on engines that originated here. Naturally, China's C919 is part of that story as well. Back in 2018, COMAC, the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, signed an order for 760 LEAP-1C engines from this very facility. These engines were intended to equip roughly 380 aircraft. So far, only 18 C919s have been delivered, which means nearly 360 engines are still awaiting delivery. Safran even hinted last year that if the C919 truly moves into large-scale production, they would not rule out setting up a dedicated LEAP-1C assembly line in China itself. In fact, they already opened a similar center in Tianjin for the LEAP-1A, with an initial capacity of 50 units per year. This showed confidence that cooperation could deepen. But there is one major complication. CFM International is not fully French. It is a joint venture between France's Safran and America's GE Aerospace, each controlling exactly half the company. This structure gives Washington a powerful lever. At any time, if US policymakers choose to impose sanctions on China, they can simply block the supply of engines, regardless of France's willingness to cooperate. And history suggests this is not just a theoretical possibility. As recently as late May this year, the US Department of Commerce sent a signal by announcing it was considering suspending export licenses for certain American companies working with COMAC. Shortly after, longtime US suppliers who had supported the Chinese aircraft project found themselves denied when applying for new export approvals. CFM International, the supplier of the LEAP-1C, was one of the companies hit. The consequences could go beyond engines. The C919 also relies on numerous other critical American-made components. Its avionics system was developed with GE. Its communication and navigation systems are sourced from Raytheon. Its hydraulic flight control systems come from Parker Hannifin. Its auxiliary power unit is built by Honeywell. Even its landing gear hydraulics are supplied by Parker Aerospace. While the US government has not revealed precisely which export licenses have been suspended, one fact is undeniable. If the engines were suddenly cut off, it would instantly throw the C919's production and delivery timeline into chaos. Some US media outlets have gone so far as to predict that if the LEAP 1C supply is stopped completely, the C919 program could collapse within 3 years. So why would Washington take such a risk, straining relations with one of the world's largest aviation markets, and a customer that buys hundreds of Boeing aircraft? To answer this, we must look not at airplanes but at minerals buried deep in the earth, rare earth elements. In today's world, rare earths are essential to nearly every high-tech industry. Smartphones, electric vehicles, renewable energy turbines, and advanced military systems all depend on them. And in this domain, China has built a position of overwhelming strength. Though it controls only about 37% of global rare earth reserves, it commands over 90% of refining capacity and technologies. When it comes to heavy rare earth elements, the ones that are most critical for advanced applications, China is the only country on Earth with complete separation and purification capabilities. For the United States, this is a strategic weakness. Over 70% of its rare earth imports come directly from China, and its dependence on Chinese heavy rare earths is nearly 100%. In other words, if Beijing were to tighten exports, America's supply chains for electronics, energy, and defense could face severe disruptions. Over the past 2 years, China has done exactly that, raising barriers, tightening rules, and restricting shipments in response to Western pressure. And tellingly, just 1 month before Washington floated the idea of cutting off engines for the C919, Beijing once again raised its export standards for rare earth materials. The timing was not a coincidence. It revealed a bigger picture. This is no longer just about one airplane. It is about leverage, dependency, and who controls the materials and technologies that will shape the future of global industry. Any company that wishes to export rare earth materials from China must now obtain an official license, a process that requires not only detailed applications, but also clear disclosure of the final use and the identity of the end customer. This is not just a bureaucratic step. It reflects Beijing's growing control over resources that are critical to high-tech industries worldwide. While the door has not been completely closed to exports, the space left open is deliberately narrow. Civilian industries such as automotive manufacturing and consumer electronics still have room to access Chinese rare earths. But the moment these materials are suspected of having possible military applications, the approval process becomes nearly impossible. In other words, what used to be an ordinary trade flow has now transformed into a matter of strategic security. The first major shockwaves from these measures were felt not in Asia, but across the Pacific. The American military-industrial complex, heavily dependent on rare earths for advanced weaponry, drones, radar systems, and jet engines, suddenly found itself under immense pressure. Defense contractors rushed to secure alternative supplies outside of China, but their urgent efforts quickly collided with harsh reality. A drone component manufacturer working for the Pentagon revealed how they had attempted to source rare earths from other nations, engaging in multiple rounds of negotiations across several continents. Yet despite all efforts, not a single deal was successfully closed. Instead, production schedules were disrupted, and critical orders were delayed by as much as 2 months, a serious problem in a sector where time often equals national security. What made matters worse was the volatility in the market. Prices for certain key rare earths soared within a matter of weeks. By mid-June, the cost of materials needed for magnetic components had surged more than 5 times compared to just 2 months earlier. Samarium, an essential metal used in the engines of fighter jets, witnessed a staggering price explosion, rising nearly 60-fold. For contractors and military planners, this wasn't just an economic inconvenience. It was a strategic nightmare. Caught between resource shortages and skyrocketing costs, Washington was forced to adjust its posture. On July 4th, in a strikingly symbolic move, the U.S. Department of Commerce approved General Electric Aerospace to resume supplying jet engines to China's state-owned aircraft manufacturer Comac. Soon after, several American companies that produce aviation components also resumed deliveries for China's growing commercial aviation sector. The reason was straightforward. If the United States insisted on enforcing a strict ban, it would not only risk breaching procurement contracts, but it would also severely hurt its own manufacturers who depend on China's rapidly expanding aviation market. Far from weakening China, such a strategy threatened to inflict self-damage, as American suppliers stood to lose access to one of the most promising markets in the world. More importantly, any attempt to choke China's aviation sector could easily backfire, pushing Beijing to accelerate its quest for independence in aviation technology. Although Washington eventually backed down, allowing exports of engines for the C919 to resume, this decision is widely seen as temporary. It is a stopgap measure, not a permanent guarantee, and one that could be reversed at any moment. China understands this better than anyone. And at this very moment of uncertainty, Russia stepped forward. Moscow declared openly that it was willing to fill any gap left by the West. Sergei Kimzov, the general manager of Rostec, a powerful Russian state-owned technology group, announced that his company was ready to provide China with all the aircraft engines it might need. Rostec is no small player. It is one of the largest industrial groups in Russia, with deep expertise in aerospace and defense. Its engine manufacturing subsidiary ranks 5th in the world, trailing only giants like General Electric, Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, and CFM. Their portfolio covers nearly the entire spectrum of aviation engines, from the PD-8 and PD-14 already in active use to the PD-35 currently under development for long-range wide-body jets. Rostec's true strength, however, lies in military engines, where its global standing is second only to the United States. The PD-14, in particular, represents a milestone for Russian engineering, the first high-thrust turbofan engine fully developed independently in recent years. It meets international standards, and it currently powers the MC-21, a Russian aircraft designed to compete head-to-head with the Boeing 737 and Airbus A320. This places Russia in a position to offer China a credible alternative should the US once again attempt to weaponize engine exports. But Beijing has not been waiting passively for others to solve its problems. Anticipating potential cutoffs, Chinese engineers have been pushing forward with their own solution, the CJ1000A. This domestically developed engine has steadily gained attention as the only serious Chinese-made candidate capable of replacing the imported LEAP-1C engines that currently power the C919. With a thrust capacity of about 13 tons, composite fan blades, and a modern digital control system, the CJ1000A already boasts fuel efficiency close to that of its Western counterparts. Its development has reached significant milestones. It successfully completed a 150-hour core endurance test and is now preparing for installation on the C919 for high-altitude test flights. If it secures certification from the Civil Aviation Authority of China, it will be cleared for deployment on domestic commercial routes. Timelines, too, are accelerating. Official targets set the goal of achieving airworthiness certification before 2026, with mass production scheduled for 2027. This is a dramatic improvement compared to earlier estimates, which placed commercialization closer to 2030. Industrial partners are already moving in step with this schedule. Aviation, tasked with producing the fan blades, has launched expansion bids to increase capacity. Every signal points to a determined effort to bring the CJ1000A into commercial service years ahead of schedule. Yet challenges remain. An aircraft engine is one of the most complex machines ever created, and before full commercial deployment, it must endure thousands of hours of rigorous testing under a wide range of conditions. Beyond technical reliability, China must also build a complete ecosystem of maintenance, spare parts, and pilot training to match the new engine. These are not small hurdles, and at present the CJ1000A has not completed a full flight test. Still, its progress is undeniable.